I teach law. So my workplace is a law school. Anybody who is paying attention at all, reading the New York Times or otherwise, you know that that's a place of challenge right now, right? The legal profession, right? My students graduate prepared to enter into the world to help people who are dealing with some of the most challenging experiences of their lives. So I'll talk with you for the next few minutes about some of the work I've done to bring this work into the particular setting of my own law school, which is University of San Francisco, the Jesuit University of San Francisco, but don't let that fool you into thinking this has been easy there. But more broadly, to support a growing network of folks who are bringing these practices into law. But before we begin, let me go ahead and I'm gonna try to use this device. Like Megan, I actually tend not to use slides very much, but I'm experimenting a little bit, and so here we are at experimental time. Watching her, I'm thinking, why? Why was I ever thinking of using slides? It was amazing. So let me see if I can move this. I just pressed this one, right? It should go. It's not doing a thing. It's just looking at me. There we go. Okay, thank you. I'll give you a nod. Thank you. All right, so let's start actually with a bit of a practice. And the practice has the acronym STOP, S-T-O-P. But let me just describe it as a mindfulness practice that begins with stopping. What I'll invite us to do is actually stand. Yeah, we probably could use, we've been sitting here for a little bit. So let's say the S is for now standing, right? And move into the degree your body wants to move. Be very intuitive about this. This is your moment, your body, your time, right? To put some energy, bring the energy of motion, right? As you stand where you are into this moment. But the practice just gives us a kind of a handy, portable way with an acronym, STOP, of bringing a contemplative approach to any moment that we choose. So stop and stand, you might say, if you're not able to stand, just stop. Whatever you're doing in that moment, if your mind is racing, if your heart is beating because you just heard something from a supervisor or somebody, a child in your class that's challenging to you, and you're thinking and you're figuring out what to do, and you're trying really hard to fix something, the S can stand for stand in, right? Awareness, stop, okay? Take a deep breath, the T, right? So just take a breath. Stop and take a breath, okay? And as you're breathing, right? And just breathing naturally, just observe what is true in this moment, right? Observe whatever you can, whatever is most prominent. If it's a thought, bring awareness to whatever it is that your mind is telling you in this moment. There might be some deeper truth than that. So if you'll just stop, observe, and become P, more present, right, to fuller reality, right? So it's just stop, maybe stand and stop, maybe sit and stop, but really just pause. Take a deep breath. And allow that contact with the breath to ground you in a fuller sense of reality. Observe what's going on, what maybe your thoughts are, your emotions are, and become more fully present, right, to the richness of this moment. So mindfulness then is just that. I invite everybody to sit now back in your seats and just hold that intentional, conscious sense of being fully here. And if you'll go to the next slide, I'll describe a little bit of how the mindfulness revolution came to University of San Francisco through some of the work that I did. What I'm going to talk about is how, again, I brought some of these practices into my work as a law professor, and then how I've supported lawyers in doing that. But let me just say that I don't want to forget to mention these few things. If any of you are thinking about how to bring these practices more into your work, and how many of you are thinking about, well, is there a way I could bring this into my workplace? Not just maybe with my clients, but maybe even with my colleagues, staff, others, right? Some of you are. Definitely what I've done at USF is to experiment with that. I'll just tell a little bit about my story. I had been teaching at USF for a number of years and had actually gotten tenure. Before starting teaching, I was a lawyer, and before starting practicing law, I had begun to experiment with contemplative practice in the ways that we've been talking about, mindfulness-based practices. Before that, as a child growing up in the South, I had an experience of having a very devotional Christian family around me. So I would see my grandmother get up every morning and spend at least an hour, often before dawn, in her own practices as a way to center herself for hard work in the world. She actually was a domestic. She cleaned houses for other people. But every day she began with a set of practices that helped ground her in a sense of who she was and her own value. So I grew up knowing that some kind of practices could be very important to helping you accomplish things in the world, and to do that with an open heart, with a loving heart. So I went into law a little bit bereft and a little bit interested in finding ways to continue to bring these practices into my life. So I began doing things like reading all these sorts of books, not unlike probably many of you, right? Read a lot of things that I could get my hands on. Actually began to think about how I might infuse some of my work with this by bringing this into law review articles. There's a law review article that I wrote about the benefits of mindfulness for lawyers that's pictured here. There's copies on the desk back there if you want more detail, right, about what we've been able to do, a number of us. But I basically looked for allies, both at the University of San Francisco and across the country, and have found when I was ready to move into the world with the intention of bringing these practices to anybody who would be open to them in the field of law, I found people all over the place who were willing to support me in that. So Charlie Halpern, who has the Berkeley Initiative for Mindfulness in Law, I know he was here earlier today, I don't know if he's still here, was a person who has been instrumental to many of us in helping us see these practices across law. We'll move that forward. But what does this really mean? If you'll continue to click there and advance, it really means, keep clicking through this one actually, peaceful connection with the present, expanding our skill set, right? Expanding the skills that we know are available to us as lawyers, transforming the processes of dealing with conflict, rethinking legal education, and increasing our own well-being. And so I realized that there was a way in which these practices could help us both at the level of the law school, right, fixing legal education to a degree, but as well to support lawyers in finding different ways of helping people transform conflict in their lives, which again is what lawyers do. So if we'll move forward there. So for me, it meant opening up the law school classroom, if you advance it again and again. So there are ways that picture on the left looks almost like a stock picture. It's a beautiful picture here in the Bay Area where I actually took my law school students for a retreat this semester. I take them out of that building down in San Francisco on Fulton Street, and we do retreats together now. We sit on cushions together now, and it helps the students to see there's more to them, right, than just what's going on up here. If you'll advance the slides. So mindful lawyers are more compassionate lawyers, and mindful law professors, it turns out, are more compassionate too. I actually have had the benefit now of working with my faculty long enough that they're starting to say, we need to introduce these practices to all our law students. A person who is a candidate for our dean's job right now emailed me a couple of days ago saying she wanted to be here with us today, except we were sold out. So this is actually catching fire at my school, but it's not only at my school. And if you advance the slides, this is something that has been recognized as having deep benefit to lawyers. So we started legal education, we started our own faculties, we start finding our allies there, and then we move it out into the work that we're doing. There's a wonderful book by a psychologist called Acceptance and Commitment Therapy Made Simple that I'm excerpting a picture here because there's, as we've been talking about, a lot of science behind how this helps. And I want to say this is a therapeutic form of lawyering almost, because it first helps lawyers develop, go ahead and advance, develop a sense of how to care for themselves better. But it also helps them figure out how to care for those in conflict, those that they're working with better as well. So we develop along these three dimensions intrapersonally within ourselves, interpersonally how we interact with one another, and intersystemically, right? The sense of who we are in the cosmos, right? Our own body-mind systems, and then the systems and concentric circles and communities within which we operate, and of course that just expands and expands in this beautiful way we've been talking about all day. If you'll advance again more. So the 3 windows, again, compassionate self-care. Here's a quote from a lawyer. I've been doing some research and writing, of course. We lawyers, professors will do that. Here's one of the things that they've been saying. I had to appear in court on a summary judgment motion recently. I hadn't been in court in a while. I prepared for the hearing and was confident. However, in my prior court appearances, I had a lot of anxiety. This time, I simply went ahead and argued the case with less difficulty. I thought about it and later realized that I had a significantly less amount of anxiety than usual. It has to be due to the 20 minutes of meditation I do every morning. There's no other explanation for it. The meditation practice also helps me simply to do the best I can for each client and then just let go of attachment to outcomes. All right, so it's really directly showing the benefit, if you'll advance the slide, of these practices to lawyers in the field. I'll give you another example of another way or a window. And I use the phrase windows because I think, again, wherever you are trying to bring mindfulness in, you want to kind of work with your environment. And, you know, people might be interested in hearing about it through the lens or window or door of self-care. People might be interested in hearing about it in terms of how it may improve, for example, relationships or help them do substantive work related to what it is that you're doing. So for me, lawyering is about relationships. So how is it that these practices help lawyers with relationship building and maintenance? One person has told me, these practices help me keep calm when talking to frustrating clients or when I have a stressful workload to complete, helps me separate my work and school time from my time in my personal life, and so on, right? So they talk about ways that it specifically has helped them, if you advance the slide, in working better with others. And finally, here's a quote that shows the kind of real change that can happen. This quote at the bottom of this page, "It has helped me to see how interconnected all of life is. I am beginning to view the law profession as one that can heal relationships instead of one that is adversarial." And I could read you more. I mean, I have tons and tons of quotes. If anybody's interested during the Q&A, I can read a bit more. But I have one from a woman who was a civil rights and criminal lawyer. And she's got a nationally known practice. She actually was somebody who President Clinton asked to help with a race initiative many years back. And I could read the quote in full, but what I'll say is, here's how she finished it. I now have realized that everything is connected. I focus on helping those in conflict experience what it is to listen to others, to be open to the idea that in life one rarely gets all that one desires, and to feel empowered to solve one's own conflicts in a system that is often very disempowering for the common person. And she also talked about how she mediates and tries to find common ground as opposed to litigation and adversarialness as often as possible. So if we'll advance now to this final slide, I got the heart there, because for me, we begin and end this work actually with a heart-based set of practices for me. I go back to having grown up in the South in a family that did suffer a lot of dysfunction, but at the same time had a deep sense that our lives mattered, that it mattered as much how we did our work in the world as what we did. And so if I impart anything to the students who I am blessed to see going into the world now with a little bit more beneath them than simply the hard skills, analytical skills of lawyering that used to be the set. They've got those, but now they also have a set of skills that helps them figure out how to begin the work of transforming their work as lawyers and the lives of those that they are privileged to intersect with along the way. I thank you for your time. I thank you for making space for us and the work that you're doing.